Welcome back to New Record Day. My name is Ron, and today, folks, we're taking a look at the SVS PC-2000 subwoofer. If there is one common thread that binds together every knucklehead audio enthusiast, that thread would have to be bass. Bass. Now, don't get me wrong here, folks. There's certainly room for discussion on what good and bad bass actually sounds like. But it's been my experience that when lining up 100 audiophiles, they will all enthusiastically confirm they all love bass. Whether it's the smack of a kick drum or King freaking Kong walking through your living room, the bottom of the barrel octaves elevates a musical or cinematic moment into a memorable experience. SVS has been laying down the foundation of these lower octaves since 1998, and through unrivaled passion, they have emerged as one of the most popular household names in the audio industry. Whether you're in the market for a sealed subwoofer for 2-channel music, or you want to go bananas with dual subs that will shake the paint off your walls, SVS certainly has you covered. Being a huge fan of their cylindrical designs, I sent in the request for the PC-2000, and they responded with a water heater filled with all kinds of bass-making awesomeness. With an all-new 500-watt sledge amplifier and a 12-inch driver, this modern design is sure to be the conversation piece in any room you place it. Dropping down to a lovely, oh so lovely 16 Hz, you better believe this sub is here to play with the big boys. If 16 Hz is a concern for you apartment and condo dwellers, one of my favorite features about this thoughtfully designed sub is isolation. That's right, these SVS guys know a thing or two about what happens when a sub is coupled to a floor. Since they aren't in the construction and demolition business, they actually did something to help keep the sound complaints at bay with isolation feet. But hey, let's not get sidetracked with fanboy chit-chat before we hold these guys up to the light and see what this sub actually sounds like. SVS, welcome to New Record Day. Let's get this show on the road and see what you guys are made of. The first thing I did as I plopped down the PC-2000 was consider my room options and suggestions from the SVS Quick Start Guide. Corner placement ain't gonna happen as I'm using panels to absorb unwanted boom. Having some home theater and sub placement experience under my belt, I decided to try dividing my front wall into thirds and see where things land. Having measured my room with REW before and knowing where the gallows drop off, I tried the sub's crossover around 50 to 55 Hz and the volume right around noon. Tossing on Bella Flex Fly to the Cosmic Hippo and hearing the first couple of notes, I thought to myself, this PC-2000 is far more than just a thunder-making, jaw-dropping, teeth-rattling bazooka of bass. It's actually quite musical and refined. Playing back Cosmic Hippo over and over while moving the sub around my room, including the sides and just about every place possible on the front wall, I discovered my first guess and placement worked best in my room. While the sub sounded cohesive and glued itself together with the gallows nicely, the only real complaint I had was being able to localize the bass. This made the right side of the soundstage a bit heavy and was distracting, so I started to think outside the box. I know. I might be the very first YouTube video ever to even suggest that you can get away with tossing a sub in the middle of the room. But let me tell you, it works just fine. I'll gladly take on the comments from the YouTube peanut gallery that are sure to follow. Trying the track again with the sub dead center, everything snapped into place. And while I needed to increase the sub's volume quite a bit to compensate, I was more than happy with the results. It sounded fantastic. With the sub dialed in, it was ready to have some fun, so I kicked things off with AC/DC's Highway to Hell. Even though there isn't a ton of super low content living deep in the grooves of this album, I could clearly and easily hear the difference when turning the sub off and on. By the time track 1 came to a close, I was convinced that I could see a real need for the PC-2000 even with floor standers. Kick drums sounded punchier, bass guitars sounded meaner, and dynamic thumps pouring out of the soundstage were elevated to a new level of authority. Switching things up, I tried out Sir Sly's Gold EP, which you can find in the vinyl review section. Unlike Highway to Hell, these tracks had some seriously deep content, with the lowest of low notes being delivered with iron-fisted blows. All I could do was surrender to the almighty SVS. Cohesive? All day long. Dynamic? Holy heck, yes. Deep bass without sounding bloated? Glad you asked, because with the PC-2000, depth and clarity are woven together with elegance and bridge the gap of what you have been missing out in Basstown. So hear me out, folks. Our entertainment room consists of an LCD up out of the way, spare parts, random speakers, and an older Marantz 5.1 receiver. Now, if pressed, I could probably toss together one heck of a Joe Dirt home theater experience. But I'm not here to embarrass myself or SVS. So let's take this cannon of thunder to my brother's house and toss on The Avengers. As the scene opened up and my pops and brother John watched the show, I had the vantage point of making sure the sub was dialed in and doing its job well. Cinema has a lot more stuff packed into the nether regions of sub-octave territories, and this was no exception. The difference of the movie playing with the sub and without the sub is night and day. What we all agreed was the most impressive thing about the PC-2000 is how much this one speaker can affect the entire movie-watching experience. Hulk smashed more, bombs dropped with more impact, cars being thrown around sounded more realistic, and even the subtle details coming from the soundtrack brought more emotion to the party. Yeah, the PC-2000 is certainly bringing its A-game when it comes to watching a good flick. With the backs of my brother's chairs shaking apart and walls giving way to the power tucked inside the SVS, the only thing left to do was to pack up this cannon of bass and head over and share the love with other family members. Playing back the same movie scenes as before and starting things off with my parents' little tiny cute subwoofer in the corner, we want to see what happens. Swapping out the Sony sub for the SVS, my parents were able to hear the clear difference between a sub trying to be noticed and a sub that answers the call while delivering the goods without breaking a sweat. The SVS brought a much more mature sound to the show. Having it dialed in, every single surround effect became more compelling and easier to believe and enjoy. Now look, I get it. There is an obvious difference in price here, and I'm not going to declare this a fair fight by any stretch of the imagination. My intentions were to simply have some fun, and when I saw this tiny sub sitting in the corner, I just couldn't resist. As the movie came to a close, the only question asked was, "How much is this thing, Ron?" As I dropped the price on my parents, there was a sigh of relief, and the value of the sub was declared as more than reasonable for what you get. Well, folks, call it hyperbole, call me a Kool-Aid drinking fanboy for all I care. I'm going to declare the SVS PC-2000 as refined as it's going to get at the asking price of $800. If you're in the market for a powerhouse sub that's going to kick the snot out of you when you ask for it, while painting magical soundscapes of detail-rich bass at the same time, I wouldn't hesitate a second to recommend adding this sub to the shopping cart and never looking back. Well done, SVS. Now, how the heck do I submit a claim on your website to rebuild my house's foundation? I also need help finding Sarah. I think she's buried a few feet under the rubble.